on site. And for instance, forthcoming, what have we got? March 2nd, we've got a one-day conference on the
I think what students tried to gain from something like this is real life experience with, I thought, two very lively, very opinionated, but very gentle politicians. And the student questions far surpassed, I think, our expectations. Thank you.
I think the challenge for the United States and Great Britain is probably the economy and jobs. If we fail to get our economic house in order, it's going to mean that we lose the influence that Great Britain and the United States have had to make this a better world. It's going to flow over to China, to India. Now we're even looking at Russia being more active in their pipelines. So it's important that we do everything we can to come closer to a balanced budget and get our economy competitive.
David Skaggs. I was a Democratic representative from the state of Colorado for 12 years, and it's been a great privilege for Nick Smith and me to be here in Great Britain for a few days. I hope we've made a contribution to the education of some of the young people here in the UK, and that's out of great respect, I think, for the traditional relationship between the United States and the United Kingdom, which we want to make sure remains good and happy and healthy.
Much more money on Fritos, potato chips, in the United States than we do on all the elections in every election year. So relatively, it's not great. I'm hoping that somehow, in terms of having a better knowledgeable, better informed electorate, I'm hoping that a little more money going into what a candidate stands for, without, and somehow we've got to guard ourselves. And you're the generation that's seen all of this sales of these beautiful toys in your cereal box when you were 4 years old and whatever.
Because it takes a lot of money to penetrate the typical American's preoccupation, like probably the typical British person, preoccupation with family and job and the weekend and buying things and all the other stuff of life. And so because the stakes are very high in our politics and our campaigns are very long, regrettably, the incentive is there for interests that can afford to advertise, and to do it in the most effective medium, which is television, which is really expensive. And so you end up with very costly campaigns to finally get Americans to start paying attention to politics and where they're going to cast their ballot in the last few weeks of campaigns.
Britain and America by far. Our support for Israel, that it's our only little bit of influence in that region that's been pretty vulnerable. So we have supported Israel. Every president, Republican and Democrat, has tried to bring the two sides into balance on where they're going and have some permanent designation. So everybody wants to do that. There's a conflict where your mother or father or brothers have been killed from somebody from the other side. So it tends to perpetuate and be very, very difficult, obviously, to solve the problem.
A wrong impression from observing U.S. politics, and maybe that's why you asked the question. I can't think, maybe you did, I can't think of any time during my 6 campaigns for Congress and hundreds of town hall meetings around my district, anybody ever asked me about the relationship between the U.S. and Britain. So it's sort of taken as a given, and it doesn't get asked about or acknowledged, particularly in the to and fro of our political life. I always got questions about what do you think the United States should be doing about taking care of Israel or helping to solve the Palestine-Israel problem. So it's much more prominent in the political dialogue of our country, and you might therefore conclude that it's a much more important relationship. But I think if you if you asked about it in the way that you've asked about it, Nick's answer is right. Always is a long time, but for purposes of our lifetime, probably so. And it reflects a couple of three different components, I think, in no particular order. As Nick pointed out, the sense that the State of Israel is an outpost for the kinds of values that we believe are important in the world. So it's democratic. It is reflects the same kind of values that our society holds, more or less. Secondly, a kind of continuing moral legacy from World War II and what Hitler attempted to do to Jews, and therefore a kind of instinctive respect for the importance of maintaining a Jewish state. Even though we disavow religious tests in our own politics, we kind of recognize the historic importance in that respect there.
A dozen, 15 years to give a greater effort. We do it in food, education, money for school buildings, not arms and ammunition, but that we do to Israel. But somehow trying to bring a little balance to our help, hoping that it'll end up with allowing the United States to be a little of a mediator in terms of trying to come to some solution. But a lot of U.S. dollars do go to Palestine.
I'm right behind you, Nick.
Okay, I'll stay down.